I think I fixed it. Yeah. Uh,
Lagi operator is semua stuff.
yeah, are you able to see it? Stream.
Yes, sir.
Alright.
Yes. Okay. Let's begin. So I'm going to let's end this Zoom chat room.
Alright.
And end the Zoom room to our participation, and we'll communicate in the WhatsApp group.
Alright. Okay.
Right. See you. Bye.
See you. Bye-bye. Yep. Hi everyone. I'm Chunao, and I'll be providing my analysis on the game that is occurring right now. So the black is actually Joep Nabuurs, who is actually from Germany. He's our 2023 European Chess Championship third year achieved third place, and he's also the champion of non-Chinese. And in 2023, he also participated in the Belt and Road Chengdu Global Chess Doubles Championship, where he achieved runner-up. And in 2017, he was the non-Chinese champion of the World Chess Championship. And on red over here, we have Wang Chengxiang. He is champion of his elementary school boys group of the 17th Shanghai Games chess competition. He's also the champion of the men's U12 group of 2024 Shanghai Youth Individual Championship, 7th place in the men's U10 group of the 2023 National Chess Youth Championship, as well as 2nd place in the men's Group A of the 2023 National Chess Children's Championship. So as you can see, the match is about halfway there. I'll take some time to understand this game first before I comment or give my 2 cents about it. Okay, as you can see here, I think black is offering a trade of his horse to red. So, if red were to capture the horse with his cannon, then black will retaliate by moving his cannon from the 3rd to the 7th file. And one interesting thing I would like to note here is that if you compare the positions of red's horses as well as the positions of black's horses, we can see that the positions of black's horses are slightly better than the positions of red's horses because, as you can see, the horse over here on the 8th file has not moved from its file yet. Whereas, Black's horse has already crossed the river, and his other horse at the 7th file is able to move around freely. Black choosing to capture red's pawn with his cannon here. Red still has the option to trade his cannon for black's horse. Red is now threatening black's horse by moving his chariot from the 1st to the 6th file. And at this point, it might seem that black has the option to trade his horse for red's cannon by advancing his horse from the 4th to the 3rd file and capturing red's cannon. But in doing so, we have to note that we have to be mindful as well that black's horse has traveled quite a distance and a certain number of moves. And therefore, if it were to just capture red's cannon in its own territory, I don't think it's a very wise move by black. We'll see how black responds to this. Alright, black chooses to capture red's cannon with his horse. I would think that that's actually a viable option, but to me personally, I don't think I will go for the exchange. Especially since, considering my horse has taken probably 3 or 4 moves. And yeah, black chooses to check with his cannon. Red has to respond. Personally, if I were black, I wouldn't be checking because, yep, as you can see, there's no checkmate or offensive potential that black might have here, even if he were to bring his cannon over. Now black's looking slightly little dangerous here by moving his chariot from the 9th to the 2nd file. Yep, so red has moved his chariot from the 6th to 9th file. He's threatening black's cannon. Black still has the option actually to move his chariot from advancing his chariot from the 2nd file down 8 spaces. Okay, black chooses to go for the safer option by moving his cannon from the 9th to the 8th file. Okay, as we can see here, as red advances his horse from the 4th to the 6th file, it's actually targeting black's cannon, and he still has the option to capture a horse here. Red's piling on the pressure on black's horse, as you can see by advancing his pawn. It's interesting to know as well that black has about a minute 50 left and red has about 2 minutes and 24 seconds left. I think time might play a factor as well in determining the moves and composure of the players, as we can see. Black chooses to push his central pawn forward, which will actually give an avenue for his horse on the 7th file to advance to the 5th file. I believe that's what black's thinking. If I were red, I might actually, take black's horse with my cannon. Because as you can see, black's cannon has moved from the 3rd and the 4th file to the 4th file. If my cannon were to capture his horse down here, you have to shift his cannon again from the 4th to the 7th file. And likewise, you will render this move over here ineffective because, as you can see, red has decided to take black's course, and black will shift his cannon from the 4th to the 7th file. So like I was saying, this move here by black's central pawn has now been rendered ineffective. Red is left with about a minute, slightly over a minute left. Now red is putting on pressure on black's cannon. Black's cannon is now forced to make a move away from this position. Yep, as you can see. I think they agreed to trade pawns. I think at this juncture, red is at a slightly better position because as we can see that unless black is able to get both his cannons as well as his chariot on the same side to create some offensive potential or offensive attack, we can see that black is not really threatening red. But red, on the other hand, his horse over here is already in black's territory, and he has an extra pawn here, which he can advance at any time. Red has about 30 seconds remaining. I think this will more or less come down to time because it's hard for any party, in a minute to generate any offensive or any threatening, offensive power for the opposition. Yeah, I think at this point, black is slowly turning the tide. Yep, now he has an additional pawn that's crossed the river. Red, on the other hand, from a good positional point, has now been rather congested and stuck here on the left side, as you can see. Black's left with about 25 seconds, and red with about 17. I think black have, yeah, you put on more pressure. Yep, it really comes down to time, I believe. Yep. In chat, someone said great game. Yeah, I agree. It's a very good game. I believe if you take time to, slowly analyze every move that's played, I think there's actually a lot of learning points we can have and we can take away for everyone. Notice how a few moves ago, a while ago, Red's position was completely different from this. Both his horses were in rather open and positions of real danger, whereas, right now he's rather, trapped in his own base. I think Black made a slight mistake over there. He gave up his central pawn. Yep, this really boils down to time once again. And I think now that Red has an additional pawn over here, he has the opportunity to turn this tide around. And I mean, we'll see how Red responds, Red moves, and how Black will respond to it. Yep, and now red is slowly turning the tide around. And wins because of time. Yeah. But as we can see here, black, you know, I would say it's a very great game. There were opportunities for attack for both sides. Yep, I think it might be an issue with the timer. I think red's timer might have expired over here. But as we can see over here, black, just a few moves ago was in a position of real threat and attack. And red's horses were, stuck somewhere in its own territory. But as we can see, maybe the time was a factor, and maybe, the error by black by giving up its central pawn over here might be also another factor. So we can see that red towards the end of the game was slowly, transiting into more attacking, more offensive play over here. Yep, I would say it's a very great game overall. Very exciting actually. Yeah, we see both sides, exchanging attacks, trying to outwit each other. And yeah, overall it was a win for black. Alright, so now we'll wait for the next game. Then next game, or rather the next challenger, is actually called Wan Mingyang. He's ranked 8th in the National Middle School Championship men's middle school group for Chinese chess, and as well as a Chinese chess player from the Hangzhou branch of the Chinese Chess Academy. So geographically speaking, that's actually a very, large part of China. Yeah. So for him to be able to represent at that kind of, stage, at that kind of level, I think we're actually in for a very good game. Yep, the next match will be starting very shortly, and once it starts, I'll be able to live stream and give my analysis on it. Alright, so I've just gotten confirmation that we're waiting for the next game, which will be starting shortly. Yep, so like I was mentioning, if we pull up this from a few moves ago from the previous match, we can actually see that red was in quite a good position because both his horses, especially the horse on the sixth file, were in good positions which can actually cause, trouble for black. And red also has an additional pawn which has crossed the river. So at this point in the game, I think red was at a slight advantage because despite black having his cannon and his chariot in the same file, I don't think that they are able to cause much trouble or much offense to red unless he's able to get his other cannon around. And we can move down here. A few moves later, we see that black has actually sort of, turned the tide a little because now his black's positions are in position of offense, whereas red's pieces, seem to be congested somewhat in his own territory. You can see both horses here in positions more of defensive positions, and black also has an additional pawn that has crossed the river. Red's pawn over here will not be able to cause much trouble to black unless he's able to get his other offensive pieces such as his chariot and his horse, near to it. And yep, as we can see here, this was a slight mistake. It was a slight mistake from black, which allowed red to capture his pawn and therefore, give itself a huge advantage over black. Yep, so that was basically what went on in the first game. And I think the second game has just started. Let me try to pull it out. Yep, so as we can see here, the second game has just started. Okay, so while waiting for the next game to begin, we noticed that red has started out by advancing his pawn one position from the seventh file, which is actually a very common opening that we see in Chinese chess. And I've did a bit of research on it. It's actually a very interesting opening, I would say, because it actually gives rises to many different variations and possibilities that can be played. So some common responses by black would be moving up its pawn on the seventh file, the opposite, or maybe even moving its cannon from the second to the third file as a direct attack on red's pawn over here. All right, so I think we are currently experiencing a little technical difficulties with the next game. And yep, it will start shortly, don't worry. All right, meanwhile, while waiting for the length, I think I'd like to recap on our guest today. Our guest today is Joep Nabuurs from Germany. He's actually regarded as probably the best non-Chinese Chinese chess player we have in the world. And I would say his accolades actually speak for itself. In 2023, he was the third place. He came third place in the European Chess Championship, and he was actually the champion of non-Chinese, which means he actually came in first place of all the non-Chinese Chinese chess players. In 2023, he participated in the Belt and Road Chengdu Global Chess Doubles Championship and was the runner-up. In 2017 World Chess Championship, he was also the champion once again amongst all the non-Chinese. I think that's actually a very impressive record as well as achievement, considering the number of non-Chinese Chinese chess players we have, this day, which is definitely growing and is definitely a quite sizable population as compared to, previous times. So a quick recap on this short exchange as well as the tournament rules and regulations. So the game adopts a basic time of 15 minutes against increment for each step. So this will probably explain why you see the timers, increasing in time as they play a move. Alright, if you guys have any questions or any comments, you can also feel free to type it out in the chat. Yeah, I'll read. And the people that our European master, Joep Nabuurs, will be taking on today, they themselves have also very impressive accolades as well as achievements in their own way, in their own country as well. You know, many of them are, champions of their districts and are able to achieve a good position in terms of national championships as well. So I think we are in for a very exciting as well as a very close matchup, which we can all learn from and we can all enjoy. Okay, I believe this is the next match, which has already started somewhat. Yep, so I'll take a while to analyze this game before I give my own inputs. Alright, so now Black's horse on the fourth file is under direct attack from Red's chariot. Now black has advanced his horse from the 4th to the 3rd file. Right, this is actually an interesting position for black's horse to be in, because you don't really see this position coming from horses in general that often. So we'll see how it really plays out. Most of the time, if a horse was in the position as we can see here, from red as well as black, we'll usually make their advancement across the box like this. Yeah. So this position isn't very common, in my opinion. It might even invite certain pressure from red, as we can see. If he's moved his cannon from the 8th to the 7th file, he has an opportunity to threaten black's horse over here. Alright, red choosing a more defensive approach by moving his elephant down from the 7th to the 5th file, thereby linking both his elephants, as we can see here. Now black has moved his pawn up by 1. I would say presumably it's because, he want to open a possible path for his horse to move, as well as to, control Red's horse over here. Right, Red chooses to move his advisor from 6 to the 5th file, thereby forming a full guard, and where both his elephants as well as his advisors are linked together. I'll say this is a very solid defensive formation, which might actually come in handy later on in the mid game or even the end game. Yep, black as expected, move his horse up from the 8th to the 7th file. And therefore, when he pushed his pawn up here just a move ago, it's so that he can give this horse options. Red has chosen to move his chariot from the 9th to the 8th file. And black has moved his chariot down, advanced 6 tiles from the 2nd file. Alright, red is offering a trade here. And black accepts the trade. I would say at this point, we will actually note the position of red's horses yet again. As you can see, one of his horses has moved all the way back to where it came from, at the 8th file. Whereas the other horse is over here at the 3rd file. He doesn't really have an option to advance because he's being blocked by this pawn. And black, by moving his pawn up by a space here, he ensures that red will be unable to move his pawn up that easily. So therefore, red's horses are in a somewhat poor position as compared to black's horses, as you can see here. This horse over here at the 7th file has options to advance, whereas this other horse here also has the option to advance, cross the river, and provide an attacking opportunity for black. Black has shifted his chariot from 6th to the 5th file. Black has the option to offer another trade actually, if he were to move his chariot up a step, where he chooses to attack red's chariot with black's cannon. Now red's chariot will be forced to move away from this position. Yep, black chooses to advance his horse from the 7th to the 6th file. And note the position once again of black's horses. Now this horse is in a good position now to cross the river. You can capture a pawn here, or you can just cross the river. Black's other horse here is also free to move about, whereas red's horses not in a very good position comparatively. So I would say that black has a slight advantage now, although we could see that change. Yep, so like I was mentioning, black has the opportunity to capture red's pawn here with his horse. He's also threatening red's cannon here on the 5th file. Red is offering a trade of cannons, because if black were to take red's cannon, red will respond by moving his horse from the 8th to the 7th file and completing the trade. Personally, I would move my horse from the 3rd to the 5th file here, because he'll be threatening red's cannon as well as chariot. But we'll see how it plays out. Personally, if I was black, I wouldn't go for the trade, because then I'll be giving red an opportunity to advance his horse. And by knowing that my horses are in a better position, I wouldn't want my advantage to be chipped away, right? So my goal is to just, ensure the red's horses are in the position that they are right now, so that I can develop on my own horses and as well as to develop any attacking opportunities. Yep, so as discussed, black moved his horse up to the 5th file. He did not go for the trade. So red has moved his cannon back. Yep, and black threatening red's horse here on the 8th file. Notice how red's cannon was in this exact same position 2 moves ago, as we can see. Whereas the difference was that black's horses were in different positions 2 moves ago. And we can conclude that red did not move basically any productive move, because he moved his cannon over here and he moved back, whereas black was given the opportunity to further develop on his horses. So I would say that black has slightly improved his advantage, whereas red was unable to make anything productive or anything good out of the previous two moves. And now he has an additional problem over here, because as established, you know his horses, which were already not in ideal positions, are now coming under threat. I think this was a very good move by black, because now red doesn't have the opportunity to advance his horse. If red were to move his horse back, then of course it's worsening the position of red's horses. I think that's exactly what black will want to see here from red. Right? Red, I would say, is kind of forced to offer an exchange. Black going for the check with his chariot, and red is now forced to respond. I'll say this is actually a very interesting position for us to study. These four pieces, will be very exciting and will be the ones to watch in the next, I would say, 2 to 4 moves. We'll see what either side will make of this. Yep, so like I mentioned, if you look at these four pieces, Red's chariot over here is now somewhat, being threatened by Black's cannon, because Black's horse is now free to move around, and therefore putting Red's chariot under threat. I would say that Black has somewhat widened its advantage from previous moves, because now you can see that the position of Red's cannon over here, Red's horse over here, and even to a certain extent his chariot here, are not in very good positions as compared to Black's pieces, which are definitely more mobile and have the opportunity to create, more attacks on Red. I think that black, by moving his cannon down here, his objective is, I can only see one objective, which is, yep, to move his horse on the 7th to the 9th file. Because as we can see here, red's, defense here, while it might seem, you know, good, or it might seem actually very defensive on the surface, it's actually congesting its own pieces, because now black has the opportunity for a checkmate over here. I would say that red might have made a blunder over here, because I think that he wasn't expecting black to advance his horse on the 7th to the 9th file. Oh, red's offering a sacrifice. Yep, although red sacrifice is chariot, but black is still piling on the pressure. Yep, as we can see, red has resigned, and it's second game. So this match, I would say, overall, it lasted shorter than the previous one, but as we can see here, I would say that there was one major blunder from red. He failed to recognize this move, which actually is quite deadly, because as you can see, there's nothing red could really do, because his pieces are actually trapping his own king here. Yep. So that's the end of the second match. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Now we are waiting for the third match. So black has so far won both his matches. Our very own European master Joep Nabuurs. And the opponents he's playing against, are actually regarded as Chinese prodigies. So these are players who, have achieved very good standing as well as achievements in their own country, their own district as well. So it's not easy for anyone, you know, to achieve a win over any of these challenges. I think that once again that speaks volume to how great, you know, Joep Nabuurs is. Being a non-Chinese, learning and playing Chinese chess, being able to come up and compete against, our Chinese prodigies over here, I would say is very exciting, as well as a real eye-opener and learning opportunity for all of us. Okay, let me just pull out the third. Yep, so this is the third game we have here. Yep, and this is the third game. I think what's interesting is that if we notice the first three moves played by Black, it's actually an opening. In Mandarin, we call it Sampuhu. In English, is translated to, three move tiger. And this is actually another very common opening in Chinese chess. Maybe not so much now in the modern day and age, but it was very popular back then. And fun fact was that, you know, one of the most famous grandmasters in China, probably even regarded as one of the best Chinese chess players of all time, Hu Ronghua, he was actually, quite a big fan of the opening because it allows you to free up your chariot in just three moves. So, in other words, it's a very efficient opening. It's also a very good opening if you're looking to maximize, your position effectiveness for your pieces. Okay, so black is now choosing not to go for the trade. Instead, he moves his chariot from the 8th to the 7th file. And red, is moving to protect his horse by moving his chariot up two spaces. Black now has the opportunity to capture red's pawn over here. I believe black would have gained an additional pawn if he does that, because red will be unable to capture black's pawn with his chariot. So early on in the game, as we can see that red's horse here is under pressure from black's chariot, and red is forced to defend its horse with its own chariot over here. And I would say it's up to black, and we'll see that how black is able to develop on its pressure over here on the 7th file. Yep, black chooses to capture red's pawn. And red has moved his cannon back from the 5th file. Yep, so as we can see, black is developing on his pressure on red's horse on the 3rd file here. I think it's pretty clear cut that black, wants to build on this pressure on red's horse over here early on in the game, so that it might give itself a slight advantage or might even force, red to move its pieces into a position where it's not so ideal. I would say that, early on, if I were red, I don't think I'll be in a very good position right here because earlier on in the game my horse is under pressure. Black has an additional pawn that has crossed the river. Yep, so as you can see here, where red has moved its horse back from the 7th to the 5th file. And usually, for beginners or even intermediate players, it's commonly established that this position is not very ideal usually for a horse to be in. So once again, I would say that, black has managed to, suppress red and as well as submit red into a position that's not very ideal for his pieces, for his crucial pieces especially. So as we can see, there's quite a lot of exchanges happening, but black is up by a point and a half. And it's also, worthy to note that black has an additional pawn over here that has already crossed the river. It's in a pretty advanced position early on in this game. So I would say that black, has got the better end of the trades here. It'd be exciting and interesting to watch how black will build on its slight advantage over here. Black has many options at this point. As we can see, red's pawn here is being threatened. Black has the option to move his chariot, advance his chariot, anywhere along this line. If he comes down to here, then I would say it could create a problem for red's pawns, especially, which are actually very crucial on the late game. And black choosing to advance his pawn on the 9th file. Alright, black choosing to protect his pawn. I would say it's a wise move given that, black's pawn has advanced so many spaces and is now in an advanced position. It now have the potential to cause, problems for red. Yep. At this point, I think, red is somewhat inviting black to maybe capture one of his advisors in exchange for its pawn. I would say this is a very crucial, moment in the game because if you're down an advisor, if you're down a crucial defensive piece, it might come back to haunt you later on in the endgame. So we'll see how that plays out. You know, I believe that after taking, let's say one of the advisors of red, then black will definitely look to build on the defensive weakness and exploit the defensive weakness in red. So we'll see how that plays out. Alright, so meanwhile, black has chosen to advance its horse from the 3rd to the 4th file. And he still has the option to capture any one of the advisors of red. I think that there's a very clear-cut move where black's horse will capture the central pawn of red's. And it would therefore, threaten red's chariot as well as cannon. I would say that now black has expanded his advantage even more because now, the ball is in his court now. He can choose to, take another pawn or improve on his positional advantage. It's really up to black as to how he wants to move now. And black choosing to move his chariot down 9 spaces from the second file. I'm assuming black is targeting this pawn now of red because let's say if red were to defend its elephant by moving this move, then black would have a possible move here where he can move his cannon and capture red's pawn. I would say black is increasingly becoming dangerous here. Yep, and black does capture red's pawn with his cannon. So definitely it's looking way more threatening for red now. I'll say, it's pretty interesting to note that black, still has three of his pawns, whereas red is down to his last pawn over here. And in addition to that, black's pieces are in a pretty advanced position. They're in a position where, they can cause offensive threats to red at any time, all three of his pieces. Whereas red, can't really, conjure or start any attacking opportunities here with his cannons here and a chariot over here. So I'll say black is pretty much on the offense. Black has, options ahead of him. And black is in a pretty, good position now, if you were to ask me. I would say that if black, right now is targeting, red's pawn, it somehow managed to capture it, I would say that, red pretty much, hasn't got a chance of winning this game anymore. So the best he can hope for is probably a draw. Otherwise, he might just end up, suffering a defeat to black. Yep. Red has moved this cannon from the fourth to the fifth file, and black is offering a trade. Yep. Okay, note how once again that the position of red's pieces as compared to black's, where black has two pawns and the chariot over here that is pretty much very mobile. I would say that red is pretty much going for the draw here, as what we established, a few moves ago. Red can't possibly see any opportunity to win this game. So the best he could hope for is a draw, and black chooses to accept that. I would say that now the chances of a draw, yep, is pretty high now. So I think both parties have agreed to draw the game. But this match has ended up in a draw here. But I would like to take us back to a few moves ago. Over here. As we can see that, red's pieces, they don't really have much synergy to begin with because red has, two cannons and a chariot. So in terms of synergy of his pieces, it's not very good as compared to black, which has a horse, a cannon, as well as a chariot, which is much better in synergy. They are also in much better positions, and I'll say, to be specific, advanced positions. And on top of that, black has two additional pawns. So I would say that a draw was really, a good outcome for red. I would say that red, is the better of both parties with the draw. Yep, so that's about it. And this caps off the third game that we have here, where, Black, our European master Joep Nabuurs, has now achieved 2 wins and a draw against his challengers, which are all Chinese prodigies, from various parts of the world. So now, as we await the last and final game, which will be starting shortly, it's quite amazing how our European master Joep Nabuurs have been playing, 3 games in succession now. So he's barely taken a break from any of these matches, and he's being able to achieve, very good results. 2 wins and a draw, in fact, against our challengers. I'll say there's a lot that we can learn from him, me, myself included. I think I have a lot to learn from him, his games, and I'll definitely do a much deeper analysis of these games, another time. So like I was saying, you know, first 3 moves played by Joep Nabuurs. These first 3 moves actually form, the common opening that we know as 3 moves tiger, or in Mandarin, Sampu. So it's actually, I would say, it's not so common nowadays, but if we were to say a few decades ago, it was actually very common, and I would say it's a very effective opening because, as you can see, in 3 moves, the chariot here on the 8th file is now free to move along this entire file. So a fun fact would be that one of the greatest Chinese chess players of all time, or maybe even the greatest Chinese chess player of all time, Hu Ronghua, a Chinese grandmaster, he actually, fancied this opening a lot. So if you were to analyze a lot of his games, a lot of his openings back then in competitions, he actually moved this opening. And this opening is also possible to be played on red as well. So it's not necessarily an opening for black. You can also play this as an opening for red. And both of them works. Both of them, have the same idea where you can maximize the effectiveness of the chariot over here. Yeah. So as we go down here, we can see that red has played a central cannon opening and has moved up the third pawn. Now, also another fun fact about central cannon openings is actually one of the most complicated openings we have in Chinese chess. So it actually gives rise to one of the most, possibilities as well as opportunities, variations for it. And so for anybody who is actually, interested in learning about a central cannon opening, I would say that it would take roughly a few years for you to learn, more or less every single variation in the book. Various. As we can see, many beginners, they actually start off Chinese chess by moving a central cannon opening, which is actually pretty common. But personally, for me, I wouldn't advise that because although it might seem simple, but because of the number of variations it can give rise to, if you're not familiar with it, if you do not, study it, analyze it well enough, you might end up in a lot of situations where, there might be stress on this cannon, and you will find that, you have to move it out of position, or it might even be a blockade for your own elephants, because we can see that the elephants on the third as well as seventh file are unable to, link up with each other. and this can actually cause defensive problems for it. So now, as we await the last game between our European master Joep Nabuurs and the last challenger, I would say that one, tactic actually used by our European master Joep Nabuurs, maybe intentionally or non-intentionally, as the game progresses. And as we can see from all three of his games, is that he's able to get into a position of positional advantage over here. So he's either putting pressure on his opponent's pieces, or as previous games we can see that his positions of his own pieces, such as his horses, are comparatively better and more advantageous than that of his opponents. And you know, as the game progresses, you would look to build on maybe such a pressure over here or on a positional advantage that he might have with his pieces, and therefore widen his advantage and give himself more opportunities for attacking, and he might even submit or force opponents into moves where are generally not considered ideal for their pieces. And this is something that we've seen consistently over all three of his matches so far. So we'll see how the fourth match plays out. Okay, so I've just gotten a link to the last match, and it should be starting right now. Let me just pull out the game for you guys. Yep, so as you can see, the last match between our European master Joep Nabuurs and his challenger has just started. So as we can see here that now both sides are actually on quite an offensive game because both their pawns, are in a position of for exchange now early on in the game. As we can see now, if red were to capture black's other pawn over here, I would say that that actually would spell a little bit of trouble for black early on in the game because now red, has both his pawns that are across the river very early on in the game, in the first 5 moves actually. And this is actually not really common, as we can see. If we were trying to play, if we're trying to keep the game as close as possible. We'll see how red moves. But personally, I feel that, if he were to capture black's pawn over here, he will be putting himself in quite a good position early on in the first 5 moves. Now, I'm not really quite sure what black's setup is or what his opening is, because in no opening you will actually see that both your pawns are being captured by the opponent's pawns. I don't really see any backup moves for that or any responses to that. So I think it might be an early blunder for black. I think that red is pretty much contemplating, whether or not this pawn, is a trap or a pure sacrifice. To me, I believe it's a pure sacrifice, because I'm pretty sure that there are no openings where we get to see this kind of scenario and black has actually a response to it. So I think red is actually analyzing the game carefully. Usually what we'll see is that, all right, red is trying to move his elephant up. Usually what we see is that if red were to capture black's pawn, yep, and black will have this move, which is pretty common, in certain openings. But the difference is that this scenario is that red already has an additional pawn which has crossed the river, which is why I said that it might be a blunder on black's part. I think that this pawn is actually, you know, yep, this pawn is actually quite interesting to watch. We'll see how this pawn develops as the game goes on. Wade choosing to protect his pawn by moving his horse up from the 4th to the 3rd file. Yep, so like what I mentioned here, it'll be pretty interesting to see how this pawn, plays out. I would say that early on, Red is at a slight advantage here, because as you can see, it's up by 2 points. He has gotten additional pawn from black, and he has also an additional pawn that has crossed the river already early on in the game. So we are 10 moves in, and red has an additional pawn which has already crossed the river. Okay, black choosing to put on a pressure here on red's horse as well as cannon by moving his cannon from the 6th to the 7th file. I would say that red can actually force a trade from black here, because if you move his horse from the 3rd to the 5th file, it's threatening black's chariot as well as black's cannon over here. Alright, so now both parties have exchanged pieces. Alright, once again, we take note of black's horse's positions. You can see one horse is over here, hasn't moved from the 2nd file. The other horse is over here at the 9th file. There's not really any immediate opportunity for advancement or development of his position over here. So, black's horses currently are not in a very ideal position as of now. Whereas if you can see red, you know, its cannons are more or less mobile, as horse here has an opportunity for advancement, definitely in the future, in the next few steps. And, if red were to free up his chariots, to move his chariots, you can really, try to build on the positional advantage once again. And this is something that we've also observed in previous matches, where red was able red, which is our European master, Joep Nabuurs. He's able to get into positions of positional advantage of his pieces, and he's able to build on that so far. So we'll be looking to see how he can build on this slight position advantage, or how he might even, submit or force black into poorer positions of his existing pieces. Red has moved his chariot out in the 9th file by one space over here. So it's definitely giving its chariot, more options for mobility in the next move or in the subsequent moves. Black playing a defensive move by moving its advisors up from the 6th to the 5th file. I assume it's because, Black's probably thinking of advancing his chariot over here. So both parties, advance their chariots. It's actually interesting to note that how red has actually 4 pieces on this side of the board, because we can see 2 cannons here, a chariot here, and another chariot here, which he can actually move anytime. And in addition to that, he also has an additional pawn. Red also has an additional pawn on the right side. So this right side is looking pretty dangerous at this stage of the game. And if we contrast it to black, his pieces are pretty much scattered around the board, and most of his pieces are not really able to cause much threat, much offensive capability or opportunity to red. In particular, if we look at this horse here, and this cannon here, you know, so red is definitely in a much better position now. His pieces also, you know, I would say are in the right place at this stage of the game. Black moved his horse up from the second to the third file. At least give himself a chance to improve the position of his horse. But as it seems here, I'm pretty sure that the next, subsequent moves, it will be red that's pretty much on the offensive here, given that he's already gathered his pieces, you know, on one side of the board. So it's pretty much prepared to launch, any potential attacks or attacking opportunities on black. Alright, black choosing to move his cannon from the fifth to the sixth file. You know, it's a pretty defensive move, I would say. So I think the black is also prepared. He probably already knows that for most of the game, he's also probably playing on the defense now. And this actually brings me back to the same point which I mentioned at the start of the game. Before this game even started, about the central cannon. So there are a lot of variations of the central cannon, and this is a defensive variation of a central cannon. So not necessarily, the central cannon always has to remain a central cannon. It can actually give rise to, defensive moves and setups if necessary. So as you can see, red has captured an additional elephant of black, and if you can see the advantage that black now has, red now has, is an additional elephant, additional pawn that's crossed the river as well. So red, is therefore building on its advantage, as we can see. Now, as the game progresses, it's starting to materialize into more of a material advantage for red. Also, at this, point where red captures black's elephant is a very crucial moment in the game because now black has, one less elephant. It's pretty hard for, black to play an end game with, being an elephant down. Because we have to remember that he's also an additional pawn down as well. So now as you can see, black, in order to threaten red's cannon here, has moved his horse back from the 9th to the 8th file. So this actually, supports my point earlier on, where, red was actually able to submit his opponents into, poor positional moves, and he'll be looking to build on that right now, as we can see. So black has moved up his pawn to prevent red from capturing its pawn with his cannon. Okay, if you were to ask me at this stage as well, I would say that I don't really see, black being on the offensive or being a threat to red at this point. Because, one of his horse is back all the way at the 8th file. Its cannon, is in a pretty much defensive position, unable to advance as well because of red's pawn. And so the mobile pieces, which are its horse and its chariot, are unable to, cause any offensive firepower or opportunity for black against red. Whereas red, on the other hand, as we can see, he has 4 pieces which are pretty much mobile. And an additional pawn, as we can see here. So to recap, red's pieces are more or less mobile. They're all grouped together, which is where you want to be. You don't want to be scattered all around the board. You rather concentrate them on one side of the board so as to provide, the firepower and offensive threat. Red has advanced his pawn, threatening black's cannon. So black's cannon is more or less forced to move. There's also a possible opportunity for a trade here, which I believe will further strengthen, red's advantage. So I think either ways, red is pretty much in control of the game right now. Black also has an opportunity to move his horse from the 6th to the 4th file here, but I don't think that will cause, much worry for red. Because as established earlier, black only has the option of moving its horse and its chariot for offensive purposes. And those two pieces alone are not really going to cause much threat, especially if red has four mobile pieces on the other end, both of his cannons, one of his horses, and as well as one of his chariot for defense if necessary. So I think that either ways, this is another move that red used, which probably will pin and submit black into a poorer position, therefore strengthening its own advantage. So, and it's also interesting to note that at this point, we can see the timer on black is about 6 minutes, whereas red has only about a little over 3 minutes left. So if red, wishes to kill off this game, I think that you have to do it soon, because otherwise, he might allow black back into this game. So red has captured black's central pawn, and I think black has the opportunity to capture one of red's pawns as well in the next move. I would say that this horse on the 8th file, it's going to be quite a big problem for black if black wishes to go on the offense. Because black is pretty much a piece down when it comes to, offense. Yeah, this was a brilliant move by red. It prevents black from checking. Yeah, it prevents black from checking, and at the same time, you know, it's checkmate over here. Yep, so black will have to definitely prevent the checkmate. Yep, if he advances his pawn, now he's targeting the cannon over here. Because this cannon is the restricting factor, and it's standing in between, red and the checkmate. So now red has gained an additional elephant because black is forced to protect his cannon. So as we can see now, black is pretty much at a huge disadvantage. Although black is finally able to get its horse out from its original position, but now we know that black is down an additional elephant. So now black has actually lost both of his elephants, whereas red still has his pieces which are pretty much mobile, and has an additional pawn here which has crossed the river. now we can see that black is actually taking, quite a large amount of time planning his next move. Because like what we mentioned earlier, I think that he recognizes that now he's down both of his elephants, which is a pretty significant loss when it comes to defensive, you know, setups and when it comes to the defensive aspect of the game. And now the red, has all of his pieces which are pretty much mobile. Black is also unable to cause, any offensive worry or threat to red as well. Alright, black choosing to advance his horse from the 7th to the 5th file. Here. I don't think that's a very ideal move for black because, if red were to move his pawn away, then it will actually, suppress and submit black's horse, as you can see, because now black's horse is unable to move. So I think, it was in hopes that black, could offer an additional attacking piece in terms of his horse. Alright, so both parties are choosing to advance their horses. I mean, if you were to ask me once again, I'll say that red is in a much better position because black, has both of his elephants gone. Red has an additional pawn over here, right at the doorstep of black's, king and territory here. So I think that if both of them are thinking of going on the offense, then at the end of the day, it's pretty much red that will emerge the better of both parties. Yep, once again, as you can see, red can't is not really much of a threat. Sorry, black is not really much of a threat to red. Although his horse is over here, but he doesn't have the option of this move for a check. I think now time will start to be a factor here. Red is now left with 35 seconds. So on paper, although red is at a sizable advantage, but it remains to see if he's able to materialize this advantage, in view of the time. So as we speak, he's now under 20 seconds. I would say this is going to be quite an exciting finish. It's quite an interesting finish as well. Because although red, has an advantage on paper, but it's critically down on time. Red is now only left with 17 seconds as we speak. And usually is when under time pressure, we'll see, blunders being made, we'll see moves which are not so efficient being made, and we'll see opportunities for a turnaround in the game. So we'll see if Red is able to hold his composure and, finish off the game strong, or will time be a factor? Yep, Black is unable to capture Red's cannon, otherwise there'll be a checkmate. This is gonna be a very frantic ending. Both of them are, less than 10 seconds apart. Oh, okay. Yep, very smart. Red is trying to increase his time here because every move has an increment of 5 seconds. Yep, so it's a checkmate, as you can see. Because, Red's king is unable to move out. I would say this is actually a very entertaining and interesting game because if you were to move back a few moves ago, as we can see around at this stage, Red is pretty much in control of the game, but I think that, owing to time, you know, owing to the pressure, then, it slowly translated into somewhat, a blunder for Red, as we can see here. Yep, but overall, I would say it's a very good game. It's a very exciting game as well, especially the ending. And once again, as we can see, our European master, Joep Nabuurs, you know, he was able originally to build on his positional advantage early on in the game. Around at this stage of the game, he was able to build and he eventually became, a material advantage as well, where he was actually able to capture both of his opponent's elephants and therefore, you know, giving himself a huge advantage. And, in fact, when I actually analyze this game on a separate, a software engine, at this point of the game, Red's actually at a very huge advantage. So I would say that, 80% of the time, Red will definitely go on to win this game at this position, at this point of the time. So, and I think, that actually speaks volume about, the skills as well as, what our European master actually, the depth he has, the knowledge he has in the game, as well as, the technical skills that he has. He's able to build on, small positional advantages across all four games. And, you know, eventually it might even translate to material advantages, suppressing his opponents, forcing them into, you know, positions which are less ideal. But I think, ultimately in the end, time was a factor, and yeah, eventually I'd say he handed the game back to his opponent. So yeah, that pretty much concludes the four games that we have today with our European master Joep Nabuurs. He's probably considered the best, non-Chinese chess player in the world right now. And for him to come up against prodigies that we have in Chinese chess, I think that it's a very good exchange, culturally, as well as in terms of international development for Chinese chess as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed the games that we have today, and I hope that you guys learned something from it. I definitely enjoyed it. Learned a lot just by analyzing the game as well. And yeah, I hope you guys had a great time. And with that, I think I'll end the live sharing here. Yep. Thank you so much for your time, and see you guys in the next event. Bye bye.